Hello. Welcome to the Future Sound Systems live stream. Yes, mate. That's how you start a live stream.
Top intro.
Hey, have a bit of that. Not panned off to the left today.
Fantastic.
Hello, and welcome to the Future Sound Systems new module live stream. No guesses at all. Well, no prizes, rather, for guessing what the module is. It's in the thumbnail, and the demo is out. But, Mr. Finlay Shakespeare, how are you?
I'm very, very well, thank you, Ben. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very happy with the technology today. Those that saw us on Wednesday will know that was a little bit of a pain. And I've actually, ridiculously beautiful, thanks Alpha Stair, that's exactly right. I have a crush delay, the same one that I thought had died in the demo. Isn't dead. And I'm going through my modular. The solution to fix the audio, there were simpler solutions, let's be honest, but the solution was to make a modular vocal processing rack, bring a load of long cables over and play DJ, I won't say what I said earlier, but DJ Idiot for the start of the stream. We've got clouds, div into clouds rather than rings into clouds. We've got verb for days. It's all going on. We're totally sound. So, overkill. Absolute overkill. But funnily, and before we get into the recombination engine, you do process your vocals through a modular.
I do. Yes, that's the thing I do.
Just out of curiosity, how and why did that come about? Is that a convenience of performing with a case of modular, or?
It was mainly through trying to do something more interesting with my voice. So kind of doing stuff with, if you ever listen to these guys, Severed Heads, there's a lot of kind of interesting like vocal stuff going on there where using like primitive samplers and triggered off whatever kit they had at the time. And just so much love for the Harvestman Time Safari.
Yes.
That I was like, I'm gonna try throwing vocals through this, and that was really where it all came from. Was just doing that first, and then kind of got into using clouds to do some more kind of fluffy stuff at the end of that chain. So yeah, the main chain that I pretty much always use is our TG5 preamp to take the vocals up to modular level, and then that into the Time Safari, and then the Time Safari into clouds. But I keep thinking I'm going to change it up, but I don't know how I would do that because I really like those modules and I don't really want to change them. I think maybe more modulation, really, and because I already kind of do a little bit of rhythmic stuff with like the Time Safari going in and out of like across the bar line essentially with like rhythmic divisions off what I'm doing in the modular anyway. So that again gives you this kind of like rhythmic looping stuff. And then really if I just did the same to clouds it would get really interesting, I think. And it's something that I still haven't really done. So
do you capture many loops live? Are you kind of trying to capture, I know you do these kind of little granular reverberant kind of smears live. I've seen you do that, but are you capturing like bigger buffers in clouds, or is it all Time Safari looping, or? Not
really. If anything, I want it. I want kind of like tighter, more granular stuff. I'm really trying to push the Time Safari as fast as it will go because I've still got the Mark 1, but I used to use the Mark 1 live, and then I bought a Mark 2. And it's fantastic, but the buffer's longer.
Oh.
And you can't, it's kind of hard to like, you've got to put it into stereo mode, and then you've got to put it into the right format. And if you don't have that expander in the rig, which I now don't because of space, it's kind of hard to get it really fast. So I end up using kind of like biasing everything with like a voltage from somewhere, and then I can kind of fine tune that. But yeah, it's kind of funny. I'm kind of trying to do more like really tiny granular stuff, and then clouds again is really good for that. But I'd kind of love it if clouds was even, had even smaller grains, which I guess if you delved into the code you could do probably relatively easily. I say that it's going to be really difficult for someone like me, but yeah. Yeah, it's just it's not so much a looping thing that I'm going for. It's more just a way of mangling what I'm putting in, it moving all the time, and it being another texture. So
yeah. Well, before we get into the recombination engine, I'm going to pull the browser up because someone's going to ask. This is the stupidity that I rigged together for this evening. There was a software solution which involved Soundflower and fake audio cards to get my audio into both sides in stereo rather than just hard left, as I had issues on Wednesday. I thought this was the most sensible way to do it.
So, this is real. I mean, this is real is nuts and bolts.
Yeah, so here is... I go into the Profaco instrument interface. That 48-volt phantom powers this, which has been nice and reliable. I have crush delay, which gives me that nice raspy Kraftwerk-ish vibe right through to the kind of killing this chip, which is lovely. I then hit the Autodyne from Steady State Fate for some parallel compression. I then hit Clouds, which is doing this octave up schmeary weirdness. And then the Audio Damage EOS is the big reverb, which is just, a little bit quiet actually, but big lovely reverb. That's what it is. So if you hear me doing these kind of stupid things, I'm not going to be able to resist. That's what I'm doing. But we've a super active chat room already, and I wanted to say hello to everyone in the chat. I don't know how many people are watching. I can't see that bit, but hello to everyone that is watching.
Hello, chat.
Yes.
Hello.
Nice chat from This Is Not Rocket Science just before we started.
Yeah.
It's been a really lovely thing to see everybody coming out kind of and supporting everyone live, trying to get everyone engaged as opposed to upset that events aren't happening and doing nothing about it. There's lots of good faces in the chat, actually. Hello. So for those that haven't seen, the recombination engine, which is this lovely triple oscillator thing, has released today. And I said in the video title for this, the demo went live earlier, a unique triple oscillator. That word certainly gets bandied around a lot when people, including me in the past, have said it's kind of unique. And it's like, well, it is or it isn't. And I'm trying to be really strict in, if I say it's unique, it bloody well is. And this really is. It's a really impressive piece of kit. But before we start, I'd like to play just the first 90 seconds of the demo that I made, which should just be a good taste of the module. I think there's 20-odd patches that fly by in about 90 seconds. So let's just play the preview from the start of the demo. This is all linked in the description, by the way, and we'll jump back into it after that. Now with transition effects. But the recombination engine, let's kind of get into it and get to business.
Sure.
A really unique thing. Let me kill clouds there. Just to quickly run down what it does, I did prepare a graphic that I put in the video. It's a little rough and ready, but I think this really nicely explains what's going on. You have...
by a long... Yeah.
I'll give them my version, and then I'd like to hear your kind of take on it and get into how it was developed. But we have a scissor oscillator, which is the master oscillator, and its square wave switches between a positive DNA oscillator and a negative DNA oscillator. So if you were to change the pulse width, you'd be affecting how much of the positive or negative was to come through. The positive and negative DNA oscillators have their own tunings, their own wave shapes, their own VCAs. They can drone through or be switched through at the rate of the scissor. They can be synced. They can track the pitch of the scissor or not. You can skew them according to the pulse width. And then that all comes together in a glue VCA, which also has an additional mix-in, handy just for throwing other things in or patching it back on itself to kind of get a bit of a fundamental back in when you've absolutely destroyed your waveforms. And you can see on the graphic, the scissor rate chooses this kind of switching. I've tried to grey out the positive and negative DNAs, and that bottom wave is what that sum of parts would give you if, they were the settings that you had. So a very unique thing. I guess, where did the idea come from? We spoke ages back about the ideas of kind of windowing through different waves and some kind of wave cutting techniques, but...
Yeah, this was when I was back at uni. This was like early 2014. And it, it sounds really naff, but I woke up, I think I dreamt this up. I kind of literally dreamt it up, woke up in bed and thought, like, the whole process of like wave folding is cool. Like you can do things, with your waveform on like the y-axis, but then what really happens if you can do it on the x-axis? I'm making shapes with my hands, like, people can see what I'm trying to get across, but that whole like idea of, okay, that whole like folding and multiplication thing is it hasn't been done to death, but a lot of people have cracked that and they've done it really well. But is there anything to explore with just taking waveforms, not even necessarily in the frequency domain, but in the time domain, and saying like, well, what happens if you treat like both the x and the y in this really weird kind of like, okay, well, let's have like, I don't know, 3 peaks of a sine and then 2 troughs of a triangle or whatever. Like, does that sound interesting? And I just kind of whacked into Reactor. And this is the interesting thing with all this, is that I wasn't really sure where to take it, because for a long time I thought this would have to stay in the digital domain to have oscillators that were as stable as, that needed to be stable, needed to track linearly, across the frequency range. And I thought, well, maybe I can make an interesting Reactor patch and then put it up on whatever the Reactor like user library thing is online. And it works, but it's not great, because for some reason you just can't get the switching to work in a nice way. I don't know if it's some kind of like anti-aliasing thing with the square wave, but you can't really switch it cleanly enough without getting a load of artifacts. So you kind of get the basic sound of it, and it sounds cool, but it wasn't right. And I tried a load of different kind of approaches in software, even tried it with the Nord G2, and still couldn't get the right effect. So it kind of just sat really there on hard drives for ages, and then kind of had the idea of, well, I really want to do this, I really want to pursue it. Everyone that I've spoken to about it has not necessarily poo-pooed it, but has kind of said, oh, this is similar to like Vosim and all that, and don't think it's really going to be that interesting. So, okay, fine. And kind of had the brainwave that maybe with the 3340, the CEM chip had just been kind of like re-engineered by on-chip and remanufactured. I thought, well, let's have a play with that and see if it is really as stable as it supposedly is. And lo and behold, it is. So that's what is in the recombination engine, is 3 of those 3340s. kind of in the arrangement that initial reactor patch was in. There was like a little bit of interesting kind of I guess wave folding and clipping stuff that was also in that patch in software that I mean, this thing would be absolutely huge if I had implemented all of that, but it just goes it goes on forever. But yeah, that's pretty much like the history of it and kind of like where the idea came from. So it's nice to see about 6 years after that it is actually a real thing now and it works just as that patch does.
Well, better if Reactor wouldn't switch properly.
Yeah, exactly.
I suppose better. I wonder if you could make it in blocks. Maybe anyone that's kind of really well versed in that, because I think there was a lot of improvements made to what reactor blocks would do, so it was more like an audio repatching thing as opposed to just CV
I think
focus.
That's the thing. I've kind of never looked at it since version 6 has been out, and also like I'm sure if I got really into the whether I can't remember what it's called. I think it's core, isn't it? All the like nitty gritty DSP stuff. I could give that a go, but again, it's just the case of learning stuff, and I'm really lazy, and I just don't like learning. So it's interesting. I'm sure there must be a way because it's not really that crazy. It's just AM, but there's seemingly no easy way of doing it. I've not a friend of mine actually, Luke Knott. He made a model of it in Max MSP, and apparently that is really good. The demos that he sent me of that do sound like, like the OSC2.
Yeah.
It's really spot on. So, yeah, there may well be a kind of Max MSP model of this at some point. But yeah, for now, the 3340s do a great job. So.
There's Max patches of, or maybe pure data like the herb verb and things hanging around. I'm sure there's a few people out there who have the most amazing Max MSP. I forget what it's called when you package up, when you sub-patch a kind of whole Max MSP thing down into one little like physical icon with all the ins and outs. I think it was Command P last time I was in Max. But you sub-patch down and just have very much like a modular, and you've all these pins in and out. It'd be an intense little kind of block in Max for the amount of I/O that this would need. But it'd be fun, and you could map anything to it. I'm sure someone out there is just Max whizzing their way through all this stuff.
Yeah. I hope so. I mean, that's the thing. It's making the kind of like techniques and all of that available across a load of different platforms, because that's really how I see like the whole modular resurgence. It's just a different platform of doing this whole thing, so yeah,
that speaks to doing the videos actually, that I hope people, whether they get this or not, of course I'd love for you to be supported as a friend, but that everybody takes away, I could go try that, maybe I could try AM and sync at the same time, or wonder what happens if I rectify my waves, because all the positive waves there don't have any negative information. Maybe I'll do that and then FM my oscillator. And your openness to that in terms of how we work together, and others in the scene as well, is great. It's just about this wider learning and application. And I certainly make better soft synth patches now, having been in modular for a long time, than I think I ever have. The influence of it is so great that, I'm not good enough in Max to build this. Maybe someone could do it for us. But it's a really lovely thing. You were playing around with VCAs, something that I wanted to pull up, in the cyclical engine as well, which is OSC1. I'm going to just pull that up in a browser quickly.
Sure.
Future Sound Systems, OSC1. And that he was in the live chat actually, Chris Meyer of Learning Modular, mentioned at Super Booth after seeing the cyclical engine, wouldn't it be really cool if those VCAs were ring mods?
Yeah.
And you made that happen, which was really nice.
Yeah. Well, that was a kind of like a lot of what's happened between us, kind of showing the recombination engine at Super Booth last year, and now is just kind of tweaking things and making things better, really. And that's exactly what happened with the cyclical engine as well. We kind of like said, well, doing 4 quadrant. Let's see, and it turned out to actually be really easy. It's a little bit wonky because the VCAs don't well, depending on how you look at it, they don't necessarily respond in a linear fashion. But again, it's fine. It sounds fine. That effect is there, you know. It kind of depends really whether you're looking at it from a solely technical point of view or a musical point of view, and you get the sound of the full quadrant in there. So, but yeah, I mean, cheers to you both for that idea, because that really did extend the sonic kind of territory of it by quite a long way.
But looking at it, did you have two of these and try and patch a recombination engine at any point? Did this become like a test playground or?
No, so mainly because the cyclical engine is
A later idea, right?
Yeah, kind of, and it's very much like it doesn't track as well as the 3340s, but that's because it has things like the inject input, which that stage is always going to interfere slightly with the tracking. So there's a, you know, the OSC one is kind of more like, okay, I just want an oscillator that is a decent all-rounder. Like, it packs a lot of features into a relatively small space. I can make it do some really wacky things, especially if there's two of them. The Recom is kind of like, okay, well, I can use this as, you know, a very, very well-tuned triple oscillator stack. I can use it to do these crazy, you know, weird Formanty digital sounding things. You know, it's kind of a completely different thing, really. And we haven't really played with the Recom and the cyclical kind of engines in the same patch, really. It's a funny thing, this, because it's only really after the release do we ever actually tie everything together and play around with it, which is probably terrible. A terrible thing to do as a band. But
I can tell you they work well together. They were all next to each other.
Great. Good. That's really good to hear.
As there's it's been mentioned in the live chat about the pin matrix. I'll ping over to that.
Yes.
You have, as we can see, well, there's all the products. We'll zoom in on that one. A Synthy-esque pin matrix, I think it's fair to say, in passive versions that will bleed and act like a Synthy, or an active version that will nicely pass pitch and kind of behave as you may think. Even came with a little dry white pen as well, which is a nice touch. You'd be hard to get one of them at the minute when we're isolating. If you were dying for a pen, I don't know what you'd do. Maybe not the biggest of issues, but you've hit everybody with one in the box. That's fine. There is as well, again, this is what was mentioned, a standalone desktop pin matrix to come in the near future, which is something we may stream about again and talk about in the future. But just quickly, what's the standalone version of that?
So that was kind of a brainwave that hit Jamie and I. I don't know, maybe a few months before the last Super Booth. It was like, we should really just do a standalone version of this, because we had talked to a couple of guitarists and stuff, and they had said it'd be really good if I could have that on my pedal board, because then I can just like sling all my pedals into the matrix, and I've just got immediate, you know, routing flexibility over everything there. You know, you've obviously got these like really crazy digital systems and all of that, but what if you kind of just want a bunch of pins and you can do feedback and weird stuff with it? So we just, I mean, it's kind of really been Jamie's project. We've kind of just put it in a box. It's really nice. It works really well. I really want one for myself, because we had like a few prototype units, and I took one to the studio, and it was really, really useful. So yeah, that's going to be coming really soon. And yeah, hopefully that opens kind of a lot of doors for people. Again, even just whether you're like a producer with a few bits of pedals and outboard and stuff like that, and it's kind of a pain to, you know, repatch them all the time. Just sling them all into this, have it on your desktop, you know, have that connected to your interface at all times. It's just a different way of connecting things, really. And it works just really, really, really well. So, yeah, hopefully that will be coming very, very soon.
It's a shame that you actually have to be somewhat serious to live and eat and sell equipment, because you said a couple of things that made me kind of smile to myself. We put it in a box and sling it on the desk. If you could just put that as all the marketing information. Pin matrix, we put it in a box, sling it on your desk.
Yeah, I mean,
great.
Again, it's funny because you've then got to look at the main struggle with it has been like a power supply. Finding a good wall wart power supply that is we have all kinds of problems with like grounding of guitars and stuff like that, and what happens if you add a load of gain and all of that, and you kind of like have to come to a point where you say like, well, if guitarists are really bothered with it, then they're gonna have a good power supply, aren't they? Like a Voodoo Labs thing, and then they're gonna plug into
Strymon
that
or whatever. You'd think they'd have a good power solution if they've a big enough board to warrant pinning it all in and out.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Yeah, so then you kind of, you've sorted out all the internal power supply stuff. You've sorted out like what we need to spec as a wall wart, and then you go and buy it, and then it turns out that there's no actual like stock of anything, or it's really hard to find a plug that is, voltage adaptable, I guess, across different territories. That has really been like the biggest nightmare, I think, for Jamie mainly to figure out. And the actual like design and engineering of the thing, I mean, it was pretty much perfect from Jamie's first pass. Like, we did the whole thing of just like putting the box together and stomping on it, and it's solid. It's all our own enclosure. It's made of FR4, and it's incredibly sturdy, more so than I ever kind of expected. So yeah,
that's the quote on the back. Then we've stomped on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think we did like a video for Instagram where it was just me like battering the shit out of it, and it was absolutely fine.
I've seen Ross Lamond throwing cases across the road outside his workshop before. I found some kind of like almost look like rubber Tolex when you sprayed it on a case, but it makes it so strong, watch, and just hurls it across like a parking lot. A point in the chat window from Art Fluids, is it? Yes, I think so. Computer's a bit of a distance from me and my eyesight's rubbish. But says that a big standalone one might be great for patching all of my silent way outputs around. What might be nice for that would be a Dope for Beauty case and the pin matrix in with the active board on it, and then you could have properly buffered, easy distribution of, say, all your volt per octave, kind of all looking after each other nicely. If it's silent way, I imagine you're probably going to want the accuracy of that across a whole system, as opposed to the kind of passive, wonky loveliness of, a more synthy style kind of circuit without the active board on. Will the desktop one be passive?
We're not looking at doing a passive one yet.
Okay, so you will have that kind of nice, you're not going to get all the feedback and wonkiness of a passive design.
Yeah, so we're not to give too much away, but we're doing an active version and a slightly more souped up active version.
Okay.
So yeah, the passive one at the moment standalone is probably not going to happen, mainly because we just think, well, if you want it passive, you can just get the Eurorack module and like 4MS pod or something. It's really shallow. You don't need any power. Just sling it in one of those and it's fine. Whereas, obviously, in the standalone desktop world, you're probably going to want everything buffered. So we've gone for active as the main option, and there is another like bonus version as well on top of that will be revealed very shortly, hopefully.
So we spoke about you performing live earlier. There we go. Hopefully in the chat everything's running okay, other than my little slip into the video preview then. It seems good. Do let us know if there's any wonkiness going on. But we spoke about you performing live. Will this make its way into the live case? Is this...
Maybe I don't know. I really don't use that much of our stuff live, which is kind of funny. The main things I use are like the crystallizer stuff because it's just immediate dirt, and the TG5 is really flexible. Roy's like envelope following and gate extraction is just, I think, second to none, really. And I'm I'm kind of not really taking advantage of that by just screaming into the mic all the time. But yeah, it's there's not really that much of our stuff in my live rig. I mean, again, whenever we bring something new out, I kind of like reassess and look at things. But I'm also just a little bit. I'm slowly digging that grave for myself where I'm a bit scared of change, which in electronic music is incredibly dumb. But
no, but you don't have to run a company to produce modules just for you to perform with, because it's such a stylized, specific personal thing to set up a performance rig that.
Yeah, and I would never want to do that. I mean, the I think a lot of the stuff that I have designed in the past for sure has been maybe influenced and informed by kind of what I found whilst I've just been patching or whatever. But yeah, I wouldn't want to just be solely doing future sound systems modules as like, well, I'm using this in my case and everyone else must have it, kind of thing. It just, that seems a little bit arrogant. So yeah.
There's a couple of things we didn't cover in the video despite the amount I did film. What are the VCA chips for those that are curious in the kind of technical side of this? Because I didn't look at. You can get some nice kind of drive and push on that VCA, which, there was a hell of a lot filmed for that video. A massive job to edit it down. But it's maybe something to follow up with it. But yeah, that you can drive that thing, especially when you start pushing a mix input into there.
Yeah.
Is it that because of the chip used or the circuit? Is there some soft saturation or?
No, I was trying to kind of set all the levels to something sensible, and I had the whole the mix level, at 10 it's unity, and I kind of thought that makes no sense, because what if you want the mix to, kind of overcome what's coming out of the 2 DNA sections? So I just whacked it up. I think it's got like 6 dB of gain on there, and it's just enough to kind of clip the output stage, the op amps at the output stage. So it's not that drive there isn't really the VCAs. It's more just the summing stage. And I kind of tried it, and I was like, yeah, that sounds great. We'll keep that. Just having that flexibility there, and trying to make I think this is the kind of philosophy that I'm slowly starting to realize, is that every control should go from the extreme low to the extreme high, because that's what it's there for.
That's very
if you've got the range.
I spoke with Matthew Shaw about this before. Some modules are very refined, and it's like all kind of like sweet spot in a more narrow range to the kind of designer's will, if you like, just what they liked around a control, whereas Surge is very much, we're going to go from well in the sub audio right up to supersonic in the twist of a knob. And of course with things like tuning, you add a fine tune to make it easier to work with, but it's not everybody goes for that approach of I will let you do everything that this thing will do and find yourself within it. I like that approach, especially when, as I say, with tuning, you throw a fine tune on there and you can then manage it really easily. But I like this idea. The FM with this, certainly when you're patching it back on itself, goes a lot further than some other modules. Just once it's fed back.
Well, again, it's kind of from taking that 3340 chip. Again, there's a really good data sheet with this, and I don't mean to call anyone out here, but a lot of people that are doing VCOs with the 3340 are just following the data sheet example.
The chip does a lot for you, doesn't it? For those that aren't aware, it's basically an oscillator on a chip that you put on the PCB. It's already temperature compensated, I think. It's already got all the correct scaling for volt per octave. It's kind of an oscillator on a chip, pretty much, as far as I know.
Yeah, everything's everything's there. But it's also it's real. It's complete genius. It really is. I don't think really there's enough praise for that chip in terms of its technical capabilities, because I mean stuff like for example like the linear FM on this, we so in the data sheet it's AC coupled. You get like a capacitor in series to high pass it. So we took that out. It's DC coupled. We increased the range of the linear FM. We did some kind of wacky stuff with the way that the scaling works, because again, you can just, in the datasheet example, you can bang 1 volt per octave straight in. What we've done on this is we've actually kind of cheated a little bit. So you put the volt per octave signal in, and it actually gets, let me get this right, it gets attenuated, I'm pretty sure, in the input stage. Yeah, it does. It gets attenuated with really kind of like what the data sheet expects. And that allows you, because you then can trim the scaling in, it allows you to do that on the 3340 end. And because you've got all of that precision in the chip, it kind of lets you get away with less precision and less accuracy at the front end. So you can kind of like just sling any kind of scaling into it and then make up for it, which is really, really good, especially on something like this, where, you know, even if we were using very expensive op amps at the input stage, we'd still probably be quite a long way off between all three of them to be, you know, deadly in tune. So yeah, it's stuff like that. That chip is absolute gold. But then kind of going back to the VCAs, we're using the SSI 2164 on there, which is again really popular. And kind of like the reasons why we went for the Curtis and the Sound Semiconductor models were just because they are better than the competition on the market, and the money goes to the people that really are kind of behind this, or at least in Curtis's case, you know, some of the proceeds go to his wife. So we kind of wanted to support those people as well, rather than, you know, larger chip manufacturers and chip factories.
Yeah,
and,
if you can get the original ones that still support that family, that's a really nice thing to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And
yeah.
It's really kind of the sum of its parts, though. And with something like this, talking about DJing with a friend the other day, that when syncing technology came around, everyone was really snooty about it. You know, it's about syncing vinyl. I remember Richie Horton specifically saying at the time, this means I can concentrate on something else. If we can all hit sync, let's all focus on the crowd. Let's all focus on doing more. Let's bring effects into the rig. Let's just forget about, no one cares that you can sync 2 vinyl records. That doesn't translate. What comes out of the speakers does. Yeah. And I like that idea of, this chip does lots for us. It can be rock solid in tuning, which allows us to then go wild with what this thing does. Yeah. A really unique twist, and I made a point of spending a good few minutes on the video to get it in there. I'm just going to pull an image in, which will just take me a minute to just duplicate a scene in OBS that we're using here. But the actual VCAs move through being off with their level controls through a switched state and then go to being droning. And it was when I realized that the whole module kind of came together. I was like, okay, I get this thing now. This is what I want. Let me just pull the image up. Again, it's one of my dodgy backed graphics.
Well, I gotta be honest. I mean, the 2 graphics that you've made, they do explain a hell of a lot for us, really. I mean, we are probably just going to point people towards these because they do a far better job than we could do in words. You know, trying to explain this verbally is an absolute nightmare, to say the least.
Well, all I know is where the circle tool is in Photoshop and how to either center, left, or right align text, as you can see. But yeah, the waveform controls for sine, triangle, ramp on the positive and on the negative, go from, as I said, being off all the way to the left as you'd expect, to being fully open and just droning like an oscillator would to the right. But at 12 o'clock, it's full level but fully switched at the rate of the scissor. So if I pull up this image again, those positive and negative DNAs, you can see a triangle and a ramp. At 12, where I've grayed out the waveform, it would just be silent. It would be audio, it's switched on and off. And you could patch that out to do anything you want. So some really nice examples in the video of doing that without even gluing the waves back together, and having like AM that moves between, oh, this is a nice soft triangle, amplitude modulating something, to a switched triangle that's switched at a different rate. So it sounds like this weird synced ring mod kind of thing. And it means you can use all three oscillators separately, but still interject a bit of internal interaction. And then take the glue out, which is where that drum kit patch came from. I absolutely loved making that.
Right. It sounds
the
so good.
Drum kit. There is a follow-up video for those that have seen the demo. It took me like 9 to 10 minutes to kind of edit down a comprehensive here's how I made a drum kit out of this thing. And I thought, we don't need 10 minutes just of that. It's a really good standalone thing. Well, I hope it's a really good standalone thing. I don't mean that with any kind of ego, but it makes good standalone content where it's just like, here's how you take 4 oscillators and make them be a drum kit. And it's applicable to lots of things, but the tricks here and how the glue works is what gave me that kind of bonus fourth kind of percussion voice, if you like. It's nice having something interactive. I saw that This Is Not Rocket Science, just before we were streaming, have 2 Bafako kick halls in their new circular thing, and you can cross modulate them. And when I saw it, I was like, don't think I ever patch 2 bass drums and then have them cross modulate each other. I mean, I might layer them, I might stack them, I might move between them in different parts of a beat or a set, but I certainly don't just kind of go, hey, bass drum, let me slam another bass drum in your face and see what happens. And that's kind of what we could do with this, because you can slam these waves at each other or not through some of the internal routing or through patching. And that there's still so much to explore that I'm sure I'm not going to cover it all anytime soon. Certainly when you start throwing a cyclical engine around it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's just really is open to just modulating everything. And again, that reactor patch where this all kind of, started from, everything's got like a sine wave or triangle wave LFO on it. So I could just kind of like put those on, modulating all the parameters, and just sit there and listen to it. And this thing is just going, kind of thing. And I just thought, this is fantastic. I've got no idea what's going on, and it sounds great. And that's pretty much exactly what you can do with the recombination engine. Is just bunch of LFOs wherever they may be, and just slinging them into all the VCAs, sling them into, like, if you've got the oscillators synced, sling them into the frequency CVs, sling it into the pulse width with the pulse width skew on, and you just get this like mad box of frogs at the output. And then also I think we kind of like stumbled upon that idea at the same time. Ben was kind of taking the 2 DNA mixed outputs and panning them hard left and right. That's great.
It's lovely in that if you get them in tune with each other and just let them drift a little bit in unison, not hit them synced from the scissor, for example, you get that weird... It's like when you've got the same sound, but you flip the phase in stereo, which is how a lot of... in fact, let me... Ira, delay pedal.
Oh, yeah.
Normal in, normal out. And then the stereo out on the back is literally just a flipped phase. And there's so many effects through kind of history of... Here's a version just completely out of phase. It sounds like stereo. And it does until you sum it to mono and it disappears. I had that with a video once. I had a dodgy output module. I did tell this story recently, so apologies for people that have heard it before. That would take a left input, split it over to the right, and then give you that out on jacks. It was a Eurorack module. Great. I recorded videos through it and things like that. But when it took the left to the right, it flipped the phase. It wasn't just like the sockets were connected and normalized. So I made a video. Video went live. people messaging me, you've just put a video up with your voice on, you must have hit mute on the modular audios, you've exported it or something, take it down and fix it. And it's like, all right, cool, I'll check it. Watching it on the computer, just out of the normal speakers, it sounds all right. It wasn't loud enough, because you get it loud enough, you can hear this like uncertainty around your head in speak, and in headphones it's super obvious. But just on speakers it was okay. But the reason it was collapsing fully is the YouTube app on phone and tablet for a long time was mono. So anyone watching on a mobile device, it collapsed all the modular audio to nothing. And it was almost like super keyboard warrior moment of, well, no, it sounds stereo to me, I can hear it. And people going, well, I can't hear a thing. And it's that complete opposite of each other. But the point of bringing that up is, and the pedal, you can kind of get that. It's not the same wave because, well, for a start, one is a positive voltage, one is a negative, but you get that weird interaction. But then as you start morphing through them and how they switch, and you can LFO in all the different waveforms, as like the sine in your left goes to a ramp in the right, but it switches through the scissor rate. There's this like really odd, like almost 3D pulling of your ears. They're super cool in headphones.
It's really funny because listening to that kind of stuff, it's the well, he goes under various names, Noise Lab and NYZ, but guy over in Australia now, Dave Burriston, he does a lot of that kind of stuff with, just very, I mean, it's not subtle, because it's really extreme AM, but the effect of it is really subtle, and then just panning it hard left and right, these like slightly phasing AM tones and stuff like that, and doing a lot with modulation, but like spatialized as well. And it's really intense. You listen to it on headphones, and it's really quite mad. What it does to your head is it's a proper head rinser, but kind of playing around with, just getting the recombination engine just droning on and then taking it out to stereo. It's like instant Dave Burriston stuff, which is great. I mean, if people are into that, then this does it really well.
Omri Cohen, who put some lovely videos up himself in the chat, just mentioned that I did the one oscillator drum kit, which I'll just pull up there.
I think I saw
turning
this.
one oscillator into a hybrid drum machine and groove box, where all the sound came out of the one oscillator. For people that have seen the demo and this chat, there's a lot of techniques in there that cover what I was doing. But because that was one oscillator, I was finding that I had to kind of cheat beyond the suggestive title of, well, I need a noise source and an external VCA, and then I'm just going to slam a burst of noise into the FM on certain steps, and then it kind of forces the whole oscillator to be a clap for a moment and then pulls back out, which is fine. It's modular, but it did need a lot around it. This needed a lot around it as well to get to the more complex drum machine patch type thing that I did. But because you free oscillators, it made the whole drum kit thing much easier. And it meant that rather than taking, say, different waveforms out of a single oscillator, so they're all roughly doing the same. If if you're frequency modulating it, they're all being frequency modulated. With this, it allowed me to be much more separate. There's much better separation in the mix of that beat. You can kind of go, right, the scissor is the kick. And although that affects everything downstream, I can still play around with the tuning entirely separately on something else. I could have an envelope on the frequency of, say, the positive DNA that doesn't affect the negative. So I can have like a pitch bend on a snare that doesn't mess with the hi-hat at the same time. So just having more oscillators was useful, but it was that internalized switching of it all, and certainly the glue that allowed me to push it that bit further. Because you've 7 VCAs on that? I mean, there may be more behind the scenes to go through a switch state to a full, but 7 CV inputs for VCAs.
Well, it's that is really all it is behind the scenes. It's just there's actually 8, but it could be 7. I think I just used the 8th because I could. But yeah, I mean it's I mean that patch is absolutely fantastic, and I love the sound of that. I've not managed to get anything near as kind of nice as that from it myself yet, but it's kind of interesting you saying about like the different sections of it kind of behaving together and interacting, because that's definitely something that I believe quite strongly in. I mean, well, we're both drummers, aren't we? We're both kit players, and that's always there. Whenever you're playing kit, you're always I mean, if you want to be really, really, really kind of anal about it, then even acoustically, like your each drum is interacting with the next,
Yeah.
especially if you're smashing them. But more just from a playing sense, you're always going to be getting things to interact, even just in a time domain with one another, and playing around with the real kind of micro timings of when you hit the skins. And I kind of think that that really should apply to synthesis as well. You know, when I do a lot of like drum synthesis with stuff like the TTSH and bits of Surge and all that, and getting all of that to kind of cross modulate is really magical, because you do end up getting this kind of groove coming out of nowhere and accents coming out of nowhere, and you can pull them, you know, in and out in terms of what the pattern's doing. But it's a really easy way of just getting to less of a kind of stale feel a lot of the time. I mean, sometimes you want that. Sometimes you want like a drum pattern that is just really clean, brutal, you know. But other times you want something that is, you know, yeah, it can still be really driving, but you know, all the elements can kind of like play together and affect one another. And I think that's something that I've always kind of done with like modular drums. You know, even outside of Eurorack, doing stuff in software as well. I've always kind of been like, well, let's just get the, you know, snare to FM the kick a little bit, and vice versa, and you know, the hats can be going crazy off both of them as well, and you just get this sense of, you know, groove, really, more than anything, just from the sound
and
of
I think
it. Yeah.
you can get that kind of groove almost in a non-time based way. Of course, offsetting timings, which is something I did in the videos to kind of just add a bit of a delay to the hat, a slightly wonkier feel. But
yeah,
even going back to just sample libraries, very different from this, is literally loading up a contact library or something. All the kind of like multi-gigabyte high-end drum libraries I liked had to play electric kit, certainly at university and some gigs beyond that.
Yeah.
They were the better ones, had all the bleeding. There were some really lovely ones that clearly they'd gone, here's an opportunity to get the quote best drum sound, and we'll just put the bass drum in the room, we'll mic it up, get the room mic, get the close mic, do a really lovely job, then we'll bring the snare in. Whereas you want to hit the kick and hear the snares rattle. That's then real to me, because I don't want that totally separated kind of like hyper sample replaced kind of new metal drum sound thing. I've not gone that far with synthesis though. I mean, a little bit in this patch, but this idea you say of, oh, I'll make the snare FM the kick, but I love that you could then have a kick drum pattern that doesn't play when the snare plays, but just when it does, or maybe it's a step that's got probability on your sequencer, if they happen to hit together, which isn't the meat and potatoes of the pattern, it's going to be a little fuzzy. It's going to be a little off.
Yeah.
I really love that idea. I've done it a touch between snares and hi-hats when you're sharing noise sources. So there's some common ground. And a little bit of bleed between things is quite useful as well. I've had some luck with the Music Thing Modular Spring reverb with a digital brick, because it's more like a reflective room, the digital brick. That and a ton of compression to really slam it, but then also you need another compression stage. You could do it with a VCA and an envelope follower, then have it follow the dynamics of the beat a bit better, and you can kind of fake a room sound. And that's kind of what you're playing into here, this idea of it's all got to interact somewhere to get this groove and bounce. Of course not if, as you say, you just want this machine-like kind of techno thing going on. I'm going to try that.
Give it a go. Honestly, it's surprising how much you get from it. And I think I was playing with the G2 like a couple of weeks back. That's kind of my music creation lockdown station. Not to sound too much like Jez from Peep Show. But it's God, that really is big Beat Manifesto, isn't it? Music creation lockdown station. I'm coining that. that's
Music
mine
creation
from here on in. You heard it here first.
It's mine now. Now it's wrapped in my modular effects. It's mine.
But yeah, just doing it on there and kind of like again playing with phase, you know, and saying like, well, okay, when my snare hits, that's going to duck the hi-hats because I'm doing this kind of stuff phase-wise, and weird things going on with the filter when it, you know, you reach the kind of total roll-off of the filter and it's completely out of phase, and that kind of ducks that part of the spectrum of the hi-hats. It's really interesting, and it just immediately sounds groovy. It's kind of weird. Like, you take that off and it's just like, oh no, that's not as groovy.
At first,
but it's got nothing to do with rhythm,
No.
nothing to do with timing.
I guess this does have something to do with timing, but slightly disconnected. I remember the first kind of good mix master session I sat in. I was very young and naive, but really experienced engineer. He was talking about getting attack and release times to blend and mix in with the track. And I still had the point and the age that I was, just had this real disconnect of, well, if I play an E on a guitar, it has a frequency. To me, EQ and pitch were entirely different things. Like tone and pitch weren't the same thing. I mean, talking when I was still in school, it was like, oh, this just makes it brighter. I didn't think it makes the higher pitch strings louder, as well as, of course, all the harmonics as well. And when he was telling me this about, you know, trying to match the release time to the track, I'm like, what do you mean? And this idea that the groove can come from the actual processing, which, of course, compression is time-based, but not entirely, like in terms of shifting where a beat hits, just how the kind of pump and pull of something comes off. And when he nailed it, you know, it didn't take long. It was just turning the knob, and it was like, and then pulled it back a touch, and it was like, yeah, you're right. You can compress this more because it's playing in time as opposed to against what we're doing. So once that was locked in, it was kind of magic happened. I'm very much itching to grab some surge and patch up some drums. I'm not in a position to do it. In case anyone comments, oh, do it. I'm not. It would take me way too long to pull all that in, despite me having some nice voice. I don't have I don't have the drum stuff to hand. That's a really interesting idea. Another one that, again, maybe is a follow-up to the follow-up video with this, having all the oscillators there and this inbuilt switching be interactive, that's nice between other instruments, I find, in terms of patching like a bass and a lead or a mid-voice and a low voice, where you may FM, or in this case where it's really nice, you go through the switching state, your lead or more higher mid-voice with the bass voice, or vice versa, because you can completely decouple the rates of these. Having the positive DNA be a bass that is then switched at a higher rate that is sequenced differently, ideally in key and with relative intervals, octaves and fifths always work really well. That's a really nice thing. And then the negative, you've still kind of got this, do something else. Either third voice in harmony or a higher voice again, or just a static pitch. It's quite nice where one of the oscillators isn't synced, and some of the patches in the video, although I could have just hit CV lock, it would kind of break this decoupled pitch that they were doing. So I did have a buffered mult splitting pitch a few times just to be able to decouple it, and then you can almost use the CV lock as a performance switch, just like, hey, I'm going to slam you all into what this is doing, and work around it. Same with the sync as well, just to kind of, because if you're syncing at a higher rate than the oscillator is, you're never going to get a full waveform coming through. It's been reset too fast. And that can almost be used as like an odd volume thing with this, I found. If the rate's not too far off, you can just have like half a wave come through, or just a tiny bit, and then you lose a lot of energy because you're not getting a cycle of a wave ever. That's a really cool thing. And then again, flick that sync switch back off, and it's like, all right, we're all back to where we were. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's really nice to be able to do that. And I got to be honest, like taking that approach, it's been really hard not to just do demos that are like Alessandro Cortini ripoffs all the time. And it's so easy. You just put a delay after it, or a nice little reverb as well, and it's just, there's those like 3 records on Important and all that, and it's just, it's really easy to start kind of just saying like, well, this is a whole track. It's just 3 tones, but the way that the kind of beating is working is giving me a nice rhythmic feel. And yeah, it can get really kind of, it can often sound a lot more complex than it actually is, especially when you start playing with that AM of the, scissor to the two DNA oscillators. It can all just like start getting pretty mad pretty quickly. Um, but yeah, I mean, again, it's kind of something that I'm yet to really get completely into myself. I need like a good week with a decent like setup. Really, I need to be able to get back into the studio.
Yeah, yeah.
and just get this into the rig and play with it, and do mad things with the expert sleepers stuff. Send a load of stuff out the computer into it. Um, yeah,
If you want to
I'm
be
just a bit.
if you want to be Cortini for a day and just put loads of Cortini patches up, I'm more than happy for you to do so. Just text me that morning. Just put out a tweet. Today I feel like Alessandro Cortini and tag him so he wonders what the hell you're on about.
Well, it's really, so the tip for that, if you get the chance to play with it, put the whole thing into LF mode,
Okay.
but then use I don't think you even need the CV lock to bump the pitches of the two DNAs up. All the LF mode is doing is just shifting like the entire pitch range down by like a few volts. So you've still got all the 1 volt per octave tracking there. So you can whack the coarse and the fine up of the two DNAs, and you're back into the audio range, but your scissor is switching LF range essentially. So you can go into like, real just having the two pitches kind of go ding, 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 ding between the two DNAs, and then have a keyboard going into one of the DNAs, and you're just, doing like nice little harmonies and stuff. It's really easy. It's just incredibly easy to do.
I need to try that. I just wanted to acknowledge the live chat again. We are watching. There's a delay of 20 to 60 seconds ish. Some seconds, some amount of time. So there is a bit of a delay, but I'm seeing everything that's been mentioned. Nice to see Robert Rhodes in here. Not seen him around for a little while.
Hello.
But he mentioned, nice to catch a live stream for once. And I know a lot of us, certainly for the streams that are coming in the States at the minute, it's just way too late for me in terms of once it's 8 hours back and it's already an evening thing. But just wanted to pull up the resource I've been building and updating daily, and it does, I know I've been hammering this home, for apologies to those that have heard me say this pretty much daily somewhere, bit.ly/Corona streams. The link is in this video description, and I've just dropped in the live chat. I am updating this daily with upcoming streams from friends and friends of friends, and generally from the community, links, dates, times. Just pay attention to the time zone. Tonight at EDT in the US, 7 p.m, so that's a bit later than us. Resonant are streaming an intro to modular video synthesis, which looks pretty cool. And then later at 6 p.m. PST, which is about 8 hours from the UK, I think, on the West Coast, B-Boy's got an artist review for his series as well. Some highlighted past streams, some regular streams. You've got people like Colin Bender streaming every single day. Obviously, Sonic Talk is regular. There's lots of people doing stuff, but I'm updating this every day. So sharing that bit.ly link around would be super useful. That laughing DivKid head looks good there. Which is no big head ego from me, because I didn't draw it. So I can kind of say that it was a friend of a friend is a tattoo artist, and she sketched. DivKid has a body, by the way. She sketched out a whole sketchbook of DivKids, which we've got, and there are lots. Yeah,
amazing.
There's a great origin story for DivKid floating around if people want to find that. That's quite a funny one. But back to OS2, it makes one hell of an LFO, talking about LF mode.
Yeah.
I was using it to scan the Fumana filter bank, having, I can't remember which one did which, but the tilt, so like bringing low and high frequencies in, and then having the amplitude, imagine a parametric EQ, so how much boost on the EQ you add, but then the frequency of the EQ and the Q, the width of the EQ curve, all being influenced from different outputs. And you got a really nice scanning all completely just unsync, turn in sync and CV lock off. And it will do some really interesting things, and you can add those hard edges into the LFOs where it will rise like a sine wave, but then just cut off because the swizzer, because the swizzer, because the scissors cut off. And also have that like faster burst of LFO as well, where you have, say, one of the DNAs is quite quick, but you've got it in a switch state with a level at 12. So you get this kind of boop, 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 and then a hold. Almost like a bad EKG or something like that. But that works quite well. Props to Finlay for sizing the coarse and fine-tuned knobs the right way around.
Thank you.
That's not for me. That was Apocalypso in the chat.
Oh.
I've had this discussion before. The Livewire AFG is one that has a bigger fine tune and a smaller coarse tune.
Yeah, man. So pretty much all of my design decisions around oscillators come from the AFG. That and the Time Safari are what got me into Eurorack. So again, it's I owe a lot to that in terms of that was designed like that. I should do this like that then.
Let me pull that up for those that don't know. This was my first ever module, actually.
Just look at it. It's so good. Just look at it. It's great.
Yeah. I think these are being handled by Mono Rocket cases now. Mike, that was Livewire, passed away a good few years ago. But this is my first Eurorack module. It's a nice thing. Sounds great. Tons going on. And to please Apocalypse in the chat, big fine control, which is handy. Something Heimbach talks about a lot with test equipment, actually, that the bigger knobs is often just about precision. Nothing else. I mean, visually, it's great to kind of really carve in, but it gives you that precision that just mini pots and smaller knobs don't. And it's easier. I find with a coarse tune, if I'm going to throw it around like mad, doing like pitch laser, weird effect stuff, the smaller knobs are quite nicer anyway. I can get a better kind of like twist on it, if that makes sense. But yeah, I'd not made that connection. I mean, they don't look, I'll pull it up again, they don't look the same by any stretch, but there's kind of a similar vibe.
It's definitely an influence, a huge influence. That AFG is just, I mean, I remember I think I got it when I was at because I got a few bits of Eurorack before then, but I think I finally got the AFG when I was maybe first year at university, secondhand, and just spent probably days with it. Really, it's such a good thing. It's so good. I can't explain how amazing it is. I mean, the number of controls that you have on that, the whole like wave shaping section that's going on there, and the fact that you can FM all that, it gives you a complete other world of, okay, I can get this like timbral movement from the start of the chain. It's not a wave folder or a multiplier later down that's being LFO'd or anything. It's just this LFO'd or like beating audio rate thing that I'm modulating at the VCO itself. So yeah, it's, I mean, the AFG, I can't fault it. It's amazing. I really need to start using mine more, really. It's I only kind of recently got like my kind of bigger Eurorack rig back up and running and feeling nice.
That's a really perfect transition in two ways. Ruined entirely by me saying it's a perfect transition. Over to the second episode of Feeding the Monster, which is a live stream series I've started with Chris Meyer, who's in the chat, Learning Modular. Do say hello to Chris if you're in the live chat. He's filling this monster ADAC system case, the monster case. We went over power and note and trigger generators on Wednesday. We did have a lot of technical issues, but there's notes in the title and things just to kind of skip ahead well beyond the technical issues. And when we do episode 2, you'll definitely be getting more of my Peter Delay voice. and stupidity. I really can't help myself. It feels so powerful having this to my hand. I mean, I know it's absolutely ridiculous.
Pure power.
You couldn't tell a word of that. I may set clouds to be more intelligible, but still very cloudy. But anyway, prepare yourself, Chris. This idiocy is coming to you tomorrow. Episode 2 of Feeding the Monster is about sound sources, VCOs, samplers, wave shapers, as far as we can get, with the idea that Chris will be literally putting these modules in live, but along the way discussing why that module's there, what it pairs well with, ideas, patch tips along the way, and basically filling the system with the idea that across 4 live streams and a bit of work in between, because it's hard to screen modules and try and focus on a chat at the same time. There'll then be a full system at the end that is a full, comprehensive, big system that still feels like an instrument. I remember a question we got on Wednesday was, people like performing on smaller instruments rather than kind of collections of systems. And Chris very nicely went through how a big case can feel like an instrument. Still a big sandbox with lots of options. But there's a lot of kind of knowledge from Chris, and we're joined by Kim Bjorn of Bukes, Patch and Tweak, Push Turn Move, and Pedal Crush as well. So now I've got this streaming sorted tomorrow night at 7:30 UK time. All this is on my YouTube channel, and I'll be sure to post it around. We'll be streaming again, so we shall see. But yeah, the AFG is going in that system, Chris said in the live chat.
Hey.
And I've said it a couple of times now, if I pull the live chat back, do fire away with any specific questions. As I say, there's a delay of 20 to 40 seconds or something like that. But any questions for Finlay or myself, we're kind of just happy to hang out. There is the demo video, so rather than going too technical on sounds or patch ideas, I'd like to send you to the demo, and you're welcome to ask either of us comments beyond that. If I can't answer a comment on that demo, I'll ask Finlay, and he'll either reply himself or I'll come back with an answer. But yeah, what do people... Be interesting to know how people would patch it. What would the first thing be if you were to put the OS2 in the system? What would it be for you, Finlay? If you can get set up at home now, of course, isolating and away from work is tricky, but
yeah,
are you going to go for that Cortini vibe? Are you going to go for the
one thing I really want to do is get expert sleepers and just draw a load of Ableton, load of automation in Ableton, going to kind of all definitely the 2 frequencies on DNA, the PWM, sling the PW skew on, sling the sync and the CV locks on, put the 2 sine waves up, put the triangle in from the scissor into the mix, just because it's immediately like, it's just Aphex. I don't know what it is about it, but it's just that weird like formant sound that he does a lot in the more recent, I guess, like analogue onwards stuff. It just sounds like it's talking, and I just really want to do a load of like bass lines that are just a rip off of that, essentially, where it's just going like blah, 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 and all automated. I've done it a little bit in one of the SoundCloud demos we've got. We put up a bunch of little snippets kind of over the last couple of days up on SoundCloud, but I haven't really gotten close enough, and the pattern that I used was a bit naff. But yeah, it just does that like really vocal thing that that's kind of what made me fall in love with this whole thing when I had it in Reactor, was just this like, it's tonal, it's got a real clear like fundamental, but when you've got all this like weird moving harmonic stuff on top of that, it just sounds mad. So yeah, just loads of automation straight in, just into every input, and then feed it from probably Ableton, maybe Reactor. But yeah, I just want to have fun with it, really. That's what I do. Try and have fun with it.
I am just pasting links into the live chat. New York Modular asked, is it out and how much? It's at Signal Sounds currently. I'll pull up the browser window again. UK, we have 559. That's working its way out currently. It's to various stores around the world. If it's helpful, I will link various stores that have it in the video demo. And that's a question, might be a nice question for everyone in the chat. Is it handy when I make a demo, completely unrelated to the shops themselves, of course, is it handy to link shops? If I try and catch all of them, I wouldn't want to just, kind of try and partner up with one or play favorites or anything, but I'm more than happy to make links if that stops like opening a tab and Googling something. Let me know. The video descriptions, most people don't read them, and I know that because I often put little Easter eggs and links to things that aren't actually public and that publicly live yet, and people aren't going through and watching them. There's often a little kind of, ooh, this isn't out yet, but I'm going to put it at the bottom of the video description, and let's just see if like 10 people come through and find this thing. Some do, but not relative to the amount of views. But yeah, let me know what would be useful. I'm happy to link anywhere. I don't think it's up anywhere else just yet, but it is heading out around the world.
Yeah.
You may know more than that. You'll know more than that than me.
Yeah, we've had some dealers say a definite yes. So I know Control in New York, right? They're in New York.
Brooklyn, New York, yeah.
Yeah. They've said yes to it. Some other people, I think Synthesizer.gr, the Greek dealers, they've said yes. I expect our typical network will also be carrying it soon. It's just obviously releasing a product not just at Easter, but also in the midst of NCOV is somewhat interesting.
But it's an interesting time.
Everyone's stuck at home.
Things have to keep moving, and I think that's a really, not to get too gushy about it, but why such an active live chat now is great. That I totally understand some people are really not in a position to buy modules, lost work on kind of some kind of company benefit thing, or that word I heard for the first time ever when you're laid off but your job's available when it comes back, begins with an F, whatever it is.
Oh,
furloughed. Yeah, that's it. But for me, what I'm really hoping is the community's come together online, that it still supports everyone through however long this is, so that when we kind of come back to some normality, again, whenever that is, we're kind of up and kicking ass. And that actually what we've gained through this is all this online community vibe that we can continue to do. I know for me that, you release a module end of the year, next year, 5 years time, whatever, that this becomes a thing that we do. It's like, hey, you can have the demo, but let's get some human interaction in as well. It's a really lovely thing, and that's very minor to what some people are going through, of course, but I'm hoping we just kind of push through it.
I think it's really important because the community is kind of where this really took off. I mean, I remember even before kind of Muffwiggler, there was modularsynth.net. And that was a tiny little forum. It was tiny, and I think it only really lasted for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. But I know Dennis for sure was on there. Monopoly, guy called Chebek or whatever it is, CEBEC was on there. Mike himself, he was on there. And then for some reason that got shut down, and everyone kind of migrated over to Muffwiggler, and that was kind of the start of the upward slope, really. And I mean, it's good to kind of, I think, because this thing is so big now, because there are so many people, both playing with the stuff and also developing the kit. It's nice for maybe there just to be a bit of downtime and just try and get a bit of a sense of community back, because I think we have been losing that a little bit. I think it has become a little bit kind of not even necessarily insular, but just so big that it's difficult to really build a solid community around it. And I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be like everyone knows everyone else, but even just to kind of bring the human element back into it a little bit is really, really nice.
This goes
cheers, Ben.
No,
Thank
well,
you.
It involves everyone, not just me and the Corona streams, the isolation streams at bit.ly/Corona streams. Again, it's in the description. Is the idea of doing that, and I think it's really pulled together online really amazingly. You're right. It's such a big scene now. I remember joining Muffwiggler and someone had, you'll be on there as well, the first 1,000 members on a really nice print. And the idea was that it was posted around the world and everyone signed over their name. And it wasn't long from 1,000 to 27,000. By the time that was like printed and sent around a few different countries, it was going like crazy. And I think the Muffwiggler forum's 40,000 or so now. Which for a specialist kind of forum is really full on. We did have an interesting question, and I certainly don't want to spill the beans on any ideas from Schmooster or Smoozer, sorry if I've said that wrong, about new module ideas, like what's really itching to kind of move forward. For you, we don't have to reveal anything, and I'm certainly not going to tell you the next kind of round of DivKid modules, but my general agenda with that is just to fill gaps that I would like, things that I would like, and things that I've been patching a long time. Like Oct, I was patching 8 different LFOs, or say a Batumi and 2 or 3 other LFOs for a long time to do it, and it was like one thing could do this, and it was a case of stripping back what wasn't important on Oct. Remember when it released and someone said, I'd love a rate control for each thing, and I'm like, it's nowhere near 4 HP if we slap 8 knobs on this thing.
It's not what's the
and it's like all I wanted, and it was what I was patching, and one of your modules fills this need really nicely. I was patching up macro controls that would send a voltage out to 8 different things, maybe in varying rates, so that you could have this kind of spray effect of some of the LFOs to try and find rates that worked, which is how we kind of fine-tuned the rates for Oct. More stock of Oct is coming in a few weeks, by the way. I'll be sure to really shout about it. But my general agenda for the modules is to just get modules out there. We certainly spoke about a tiny little... it'd be nice to do the recombination engine, actually, thinking about it.
We should do
that. We
We
spoke about
really
ideas, and it's a case of just working with good people, bringing interesting things out that fill some needs, share some ideas. And again, it just plays into that community spirit. I've no real agenda or idea of doing it on my own. I like the collaboration, and I like collaborating with different people. So we certainly have an idea. I'm not going to say any more about that. It's not for anyone that is maybe excited by that prospect. It's not prototyped or anything. This was just like a couple of phone calls and hey, that thing we spoke about was cool. And then I've just brought it up again. We should maybe get into that. But for you, is there anything you're really itching, maybe much further down the line, to experiment with without giving too much away?
I mean, I don't mind giving it away because it's nothing. In my head at least, it's nothing too crazy. We're kind of like coming to this point now where we've got a VCO, like we've got a VCA design which will probably show actually at some point this year. We've got like a little 4 HP VCA thing that's coming that isn't anything too crazy, but it's essentially the VCA from Sturm, which is discrete. Pretty much. That as a standalone 4 HP thing with like overdrive on it, and once we've got that, we've got VCOs, we've got a VCA, we've got a mixer. It'd be nice to do a more sensible filter. Like the Spectral Devastator is what it is. It's absolutely crazy and it's mad. And but what if we did something that was a bit more, sensible but also really flexible? So maybe in the same kind of format as like the cyclical engine is to VCOs, that will do your basic wave shapes, but you've got a load of like modulation and VCA options on there. What you can do with like simple filtering and a load of VCAs and a load of inversion is you certainly know, Ben, is pretty mad, So whether we do like some kind of like staggered quad like low pass thing where you can invert them and they become high pass or whatever, that's kind of on the cards, and what we might be able to do with that. But I mean, that is very much kind of like in my head. We're still speaking to Daniel, Chris, Carter, and Roy as to for the collaborations in that field. Daniel is just, I mean, ideas like on a monthly basis, really.
This is Daniel Miller from Mute Records, by the way, which we'll bring back round to shortly.
But I mean, hopefully not to come across like a wet flannel, but I mean, it really is an honor to work with him, and also to be working with someone that where it is just like it's an idea, every 4 weeks, really. And do we know about this? Have we tried that? What do you think of this? And it's fantastic to speak to someone of that experience and that knowledge, and they want to put their trust in you and kind of confide their ideas to you in a way. So yeah, there's a lot coming, and I mean, again, in the standalone world, I also feel that we should probably do another kit of something this year, because we did Brunswick in 2018, we did Portland in 2019. It only makes sense for us to actually put out another kit this year as well.
That would be cool.
And again, I've got a couple of ideas as to what that might be. Probably less soldering, more of a kind of like, we do all the surface mount, you do the pots and jacks board, and then you sandwich them together kind of job. So that's something that like Jamie and I have kind of kicked around a little bit, very, very, very briefly. And just trying to figure out what that might be.
Ring back round to a few things you said. You mentioned this idea of inverting signals to turn low passes into high passes. That is exactly, and I've linked this in the live chat. If anything I say anywhere you can't find, someone just ping me, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Hey Ben, what was this thing you mentioned with Finlay about blah, blah, blah. Polyvox filters, or at least the variants in Eurorack I have, there may be others that do, don't tend to have a high pass out. It's low and band pass. And inverting outputs and blending them with the inputs of the filter would give you a high pass. And it's hard to get it to fully cancel out, because you're trying to balance through kind of the front of the circuit as to fine-tuning an actual circuit on a board. But you could get some really convincing and then fully raucous, saturated, lovely Polyvox filtering by doing that. I've put the link in the live chat. Anyone else that wants this that's not watching live, you can replay the live chat when this just lives on YouTube, or you can ping me somewhere else. But you mentioned the spec dev. That's something I've not had time to try.
Yeah, we should let you loose on one of those. I mean, it's, again, that is very much kind of a every time I test one of them, there's something that typically happens where I'm just like, I've not heard that. What is that doing? I mean, that is really a total box of frogs, and that was really a stumbling upon something, again, whilst I was at university, trying to find a way of doing like voltage controlled filtering that was new and using electronics that hadn't really been employed anywhere else to at least do that job. Funnily enough, years later, I found out, quite soon into the project, that's pretty much what's in the gristalizer.
Okay.
Is exactly that component that's used to do the voltage control over the filter circuit, but in a completely different configuration. So that was kind of a weird moment. But yeah, the Spectral Devastator is just it's bonkers, and it does things that I don't understand.
I like that there's the color knob and CV on the spec dev, and it's the same on the TG3 filter. You don't just have cutoff and resonance, you've got something else. If I find the TG3, a video for this is linked right there, actually. We can just see the bottom of it on screen.
Yes.
The register control, just this idea of additional shifting, and it's a little bit like what you said about having oscillators that offer some tonal shaping at the source, so you're not entirely relying on filters and folders and things downstream. And for me, the beauty of that is then when you chain the whole lot, it's not a case of going, oh, the oscillator's really complex, so we don't need a filter or a folder or a wave shaper. I like this idea. Falter, that's what someone should make. A filter wave folder and call it falter. You can have that.
In fact, that's an idea that I've also been having, is
the combo of the two.
Yeah, there's another collaboration that is possibly going to happen with someone who's very, very much into their like wave multipliers and
They're
stuff like
falters.
that, and trying to do something that, yeah, exactly, yeah, having some kind of
I have
falter.
some
Uh,
music coming actually with 2 tracks, Heimbach's isolation loops. I thought I'm just going to use this audio and
right.
nothing else, and make a kind of
Mm.
companion pack or track, something to kind of give away for the vibe that we're all in at the minute. And then Jamie Liddell did the companion pack, and I was like, I've got to do like a B-side now. And I filtered Jamie's voice down and then folded it, and
Yeah.
it's a killer bass sound.
Oh
I
wow,
did
cool.
that in Ableton, so I'm going to give it, certainly on Patreon, I'm going to give away the whole project. I deliberately just used default tools so that I could say to someone, here's the file. Here's all the audio, here's the file.
Yeah, yeah.
Same with the Heimbach one as well, trying to wrangle his test equipment into a more kind of typically rhythmic electronic thing. Which is trying to fight with a Metasonics D1000, his test equipment wall, and a plum butter. Not a huge challenge in live, but sonically it took some kicking into touch.
Yeah.
There's a few questions in the live chat, again, just to bring them back.
Cool.
What is it with the box of frogs? I said this in the Mad as a Box of Frogs noise oscillator, and you've said it a couple of times. Just an English saying, I think, that an actual
it's just a
box
British
of
thing.
frogs would be chaos.
Yeah.
And that's all that means. That, yeah, something manic, chaotic, random, full on, mad as a box of frogs. Wonder where that does or doesn't translate.
I mean, it would be pretty chaotic, wouldn't it?
I said in the
guess
video,
maybe-
I did say in the video, it's really lame laughing at your own jokes. But I did say it's mad as a box of frogs, but then again, it depends what mood they're in.
Yeah, well, exactly.
You know,
Jamie would be the one to ask. He's more of a frog expert. I'm not even kidding. He's got a thing about frogs.
thinking,
So
right, okay, I'm going to ask Jamie next time we're down. Nice little story from Matthew Shaw today that I didn't realise. The Wasp synth clone, the Jasper. Do you know why it's called a Jasper?
no,
I didn't either, and it's such a great story from Matthew earlier on the phone. The Jasper is called the Jasper because in Sheffield they call wasps Jaspers. Such a very specific regional thing. I've had this conversation with friends in the over in the USA before, that you only need to move like 20 minutes in a car around the UK, and accents change, sayings change, what you call a bread roll or tea cake or balm cake or cob or whatever, all just changes, and we've gone to war over silly things like that. So Jasper, so literally you could go out in Sheffield and say to someone, oh, we had a lovely picnic in the park, but it's full of Jaspers, meaning there were wasps all over your food or your drinks or whatever. And I was like, I didn't know it. I had no idea that's why the Jasper clone,
never heard that before.
The Wasp synth clone is called the Jasper.
That's great.
Any other stories like that would be great. Full credit to anyone that gives any stories. Any other questions in the live chat? Some love for Daniel Miller, which is great to see. What else have we got? Perfect Kiss by New Order has frogs on it.
It does.
And first printed in Mixmag, apparently. Mini Plank said, is that the saying? Were they the first ones to print that saying? Is that what you mean? I've potentially missed some of the conversation here. A herpetologist is a frog expert.
Wow. A herpetologist.
That's Jamie's new name. Jamie works with Finlay, by the way, due to isolating. Finlay's at home and not with Jamie, but the two of them work for Future Sound Systems. Akai Dan, as he mentioned, the frog expert, he said earlier with the turning a low pass into a high pass, do you just swap the resistor and the cap around? The capacitor on the circuit?
It gets a bit funky when you're doing I mean, I guess you are kind of doing the same thing in a ladder-ish. Pretty much there are different filter topologies depending on what you do for the voltage control. So a lot of the sound of the filter actually comes from the method of how you implement the voltage control. So people speak of transistor ladder and diode ladder, those electronic circuits, I guess, are just really the way of implementing the voltage control. But it's the imperfections within those circuits that give that particular topology its sound. And yeah, you can kind of, it is usually the norm that you're trying to get a voltage controlled or current controlled resistance. So even if it's not the resistor, it's some kind of element that is behaving as a resistor. And then there's typically just a capacitor there doing its thing. So yeah, if you swap them over, you can usually switch whether it's a high pass or a low pass. But in a lot of cases, it is kind of just, well, we've got a low pass filter. We, invert that and sum it to the dry, and that's the high pass. It's surprising how many filters are made that way. But, yeah.
I've totally been schooled on Jaspers in the chat. Every day is a school day. Dave Peachy said Jaspers isn't an entirely regional thing, from Kent via South London, and it's also used down here. Mini Plank also said he's from Sussex, and it's used as well. Maybe I'm just in this little Bradford bubble.
That's I've never heard that. No, I've never heard that.
You're from down that neck of the woods, Finlay, so you can let me know.
Well, Gloucester, so I'm probably too far west. But then Sheffield is northwest, is it? West Yorkshire,
South Yorkshire.
I don't know.
Sheffield.
Someone's probably going to kill me now.
Yeah, don't get the Yorkshire.
Yeah, the Yorkshire's mixed up. Sorry.
I'd like to do somewhat of a kind of final call for questions. It's good to get these in. Show them on screen. I can find things in the browser for people, and anything like that. But before we do, I just want to run down a couple of things. Not so much final shout outs, but Robert Rhodes did say, is that the crush delay version 3? When I was to add this to my voice, he must have recognised the characteristic chip dying sound, which also featured in the Recombination Engine video. So for those curious, here's a little modular rig that is what my voice is going through. I had a problem streaming on Wednesday, and my solution was to build a Eurorack rig to do such things. So you've heard the delay that I have on my voice, and I'm completely ruined by the power of having a fader bank and a modular to process my voice. I've also got clouds. Increasingly getting annoying in my headphones. Sorry to everyone else. And a lovely big verb. Lovely big verb too. But what it allowed me to do was play rubbish DJ DivKid and what I was trying to do was turn my Volca sample back on and give you the intro again in very, very bad fashion, but I'm going to spare us all that.
Yeah. So I've just been reading in the live chat, a lot of people, well, I think it's Signal Sounds, have just been hammering away the question as to, would you call the OSC2 a complex oscillator? It's making me laugh because I've just read it about 10 times.
Hello to whichever one is on the Signal Sounds account. Jason, yeah. I think. I've seen Alex in the chat as well. Hello to both of you. I'd call it a complex oscillator in that when I put this video up, I realised I should make a playlist on YouTube that is complex oscillators, and they're not all going to be Buchla 259 variants. So I would kind of call it a complex oscillator in a modern sense, but it's certainly not a Buchla thing. What about you? Would you call it a complex oscillator?
I don't know, because it's not really, but then it is. Like the component parts are certainly not complex, but the fact that it's presented in this configuration is pretty complex. So again, I guess if you think of like the 259, it's two, pretty standard oscillators, isn't it? But it's what's going on between them. So yeah, maybe it is. I don't really know. It's not. Oh, I'm trying to get the quote right now. I was going to quote Phil Oakey. It's something like, it's not simplex, it's not complex, it's multiplex. I think maybe that's what I'd like to call it.
Um,
if that's not too outrageous.
A question we've just had in that you did speak about this earlier. So for anyone that's joined, this video will just live on YouTube at the same link. So do skip back if you're more interested in this. But an interesting angle we didn't cover particularly. What was the inspiration behind designing this oscillator, the recombination engine, and what synths were referenced or considered when making the module? So let's avoid the influences because we covered that more generally, but any synths reference? Was there anything in mind? Any vintage classics?
No.
Or
Not at all.
I didn't think so.
It was just from that like reactor patch that I made back in 2014, really, that was like, oh, this doesn't sound like anything else I really have ever heard. And yeah, that's it, really. I mean, the fact that, like, you know, there are basic things in there that I kind of think should be on any decent oscillator, like linear and exponential FM. The VCAs, they have to be there because of the switching, so you may as well open them up to be externally like controllable. So then that gives you the AM side as well. So it's just, it's kind of like, even what I was doing with the cyclical engine, I guess kind of informed this a little bit, because it's saying, well, you've got all these modulation options, may as well bring them out to the front panel. You know, it's a bit silly not to. So yeah, not really an inspiration so much. It's just been kind of like the evolution of this idea that I woke up with that one morning.
Derek in the chat says it's a funplex oscillator. Funplex. There's a new
like
word
that
for
as
you.
well.
And Kevin says, did you zap yourself ever during development?
Yeah, multiple times. Yeah, yeah. I did it once really badly. Funnily enough, I've never done it at Future Sound Systems, but I've done it at other places that I've worked for. And one time it was really bad, and it went from the one hand across the heart to the other hand. Ooh. And was probably quite lucky to seemingly not be too scarred by that, but yeah, that was genuinely quite scary.
Ooh, I've seen people. Yeah. I've seen it happen to people. Very luckily, not to me. Yeah, the mad as a box of frogs thing. Someone brought up, and it's a good point. Let me pull it up in the browser. There is the leapfrog filter.
Yes, there is.
Nothing to do with the box of frogs. I want to hear this. Did that demo a while ago. It's a very, very steep, I think as it says there, a musical near elliptic low pass. And I remember some discussions from other designers, shall we say, on Facebook, kind of all publicly going at this thing. Mixed bag of excitement and others saying there's going to be so many phase issues. And it's like, well, EQ and filtering is phase issues. That's why it filters. That's why it filters. So this is a unique take on a very steep low-pass filter, very characterful. I really like it. It's great for just going, hey, effects chain, don't give me any high end, and just bang, just hit it in there. And of course, around the cutoff, there's all this kind of weirdness going on because it's been hammered down really heavily. But yeah, there is the Leapfrog VCF for people that are curious about frog-based filters. The herpetologists out there, was it? Someone said.
You should get one for Jamie.
Yeah, get Jamie one. There's a kit at Fonk for this. Buy him a kit, an isolation kit.
Oh, it's a kit. Oh, great.
He'll like that.
Yeah.
You should have just soldered one-handed. That would have been your problem solved with the being electrocuted.
I wasn't even soldering. I was testing. Yeah, so it was. I'll tell the story. I'm not going to name any names because that's unfair, but it was a case of having a power supply, an open power supply going into an IEC inlet and having to open this chassis like over and over again. And my left hand just caught the IEC inlet, caught the live terminal, whilst my right hand was on like a grounded mat, and it just went straight through me. And it's a really weird feeling. I had done it once before on an MS-10 that I think Jamie and I were modding actually at the time, and this was years ago. and I managed to brush it again, brush my hand against like the transformer terminals, and I don't think that was quite 240 volts, but it was enough to make my left leg like come off the ground and stomp it. So again, everyone in the workshop just went, "What was that? What were you doing?" And I was like, "I don't know. I didn't. What was that?" And realised it was it was mains electricity. So it's kind of I don't want to endorse it, but it's kind of fun because you do feel quite strange afterwards.
There is the
But
video. I won't find it. It got mentioned when we were doing the Feeding the Monster stream on Wednesday because Chris was going through the power system. Sorry, knocking the mic. Lots of concerns for having open bus bars in the system. That was turned off.
Oh, in terms of plus minus 12?
Yeah. Just they're being way more efficient than any kind of wiring between a power supply and a bus board system. Chris has got a great rundown on his Patreon, the Learning Modular Patreon page, of real-world examples of power systems and measurements and audio and lots of insight. So we're sharing a lot of that on the stream on Wednesday. That's just on my channel if people want to watch. But there was that concern for him, being shocked over that as well. And I've completely lost my train of thought where I was going with that.
You'd probably be... I mean, you'd hopefully be a lot safer with low voltage DC.
Yeah, I know where I was going. Watching two screens in OBS, the one that broadcasts and the one that I'm moving between and editing, and the live chat, got the better of me for a second. I brought it up because someone said, do you remember when Heimbach shocked himself? And it's in the video, and he left it in as a kind of warning of, please be careful. I don't have the link to hand. Poor Heimbach. I mean, he's fine, thank God. But the look on his face, that look is like, when there's really horrible, like, don't drink drive adverts. It was like, please be careful around electricity. That face alone tells you to be goddamn careful. Poor guy.
I don't know if that is what happened to him, but it's kind of the whole thing of like, what happened? Why is everyone? Because I think the two times that I've had it quite badly, I've been in front of other people, and you get that weird like, what are you doing? Look, and you're just like, well, I didn't do anything, did I? It's like, yeah, you just like stamped both your feet. What were you doing? It is really strange. It's really weird. It's a really, really weird feeling. I think the last I did do it a third time, but it was really nothing at all. That I was fixing a cassette machine, and again, like, just brushed the transformer, and I mean that was really not much in terms of voltage, but again, just enough to be like, oh yeah, almost did that again. Let's turn all the power off and not do that. Because it can definitely kill you and be really bad news. So don't be very, very careful. If anyone out there is thinking of opening up anything with mains, be very, very careful.
Omri Cohen went to post a link, said here's the Heimbach link. Only the host of the live chat can post links unless I give you moderator rights, which I have done for Omri. So if you want to post that link and people are curious, go give Heimbach some love. Tell him we sent you and tell him that you're glad he's okay, of course. We've done a couple of kind of last calls for questions. I think we have had most of the kind of related questions for this. We could hang out all night. We'll do this again, certainly when the desktop pin matrix is ready.
Yeah.
And we should get back to chatting about the idea that we had for a module as well. I'm glad that came up.
Yeah, that'd be sick, actually. That comes up in my head quite a lot, and I do think that it would be incredibly useful. So, yeah, we should do that.
So really this time, bear in mind there's still around, 30, 60 seconds delay, whatever there is. Absolutely final call this time for questions. I will get to rounding kind of a few things off. Do go check out, I will full screen it one last time, the Recombination Engine, which the demo is linked in the description. Lots of patch examples. There's the follow-up video to the both simple and more complex drum synthesis patches, which I'll probably put up in a couple of weeks. It's filmed, largely edited. I'll put that up as part of my Better Bleeps series, which is more about patch tips than specific modules, although this one is very specific to the recombination engine. But the video will go up in a couple of weeks. Anything else from that video that you're like, I really want to see you dive into more of this? I'm personally going to dive into some of your ideas of building up drum kits where things influence each other, like the snare FMs, the kick a bit. So if they hit together, they get a bit fuzzy, and that's a nice idea.
It's a really fun thing to play around with generally. Yeah, it's really on whatever you're using to make your drums. It's really cool. I'm just going to read this nugget of wisdom from Jamie. Stay away from mains electricity. Instead, gaze deeply into the knowing eyes of a tree frog, or contemplate the acoustics of their croak. So I think that's something we can all get behind there.
Jamie, you need to get a leapfrog filter to build in isolation, just to bring the two loves in your life together. Well, we're kind of rounding things off. Do check out other modules from Finlay. We've certainly spoke about videos coming for a few things. There's the mute collaboration range, macro and the Stumm. Stumm's a really nice mute that actually offers soloing as well as muting and group muting, which is really nice. And the macro builds a nice macro controller. We were speaking earlier because someone joked earlier, hey Ben, it's nice to hear you not hard left, which I was entirely on a stream I was having technical issues with on Wednesday. That what I need, as well as all these kind of silly effects that I've got, is I need to be able to pan around myself this time. Never mind, hey Ben, you're hard left. I'm going to be everywhere, in every state, in every modulating, weird, phasing move. It would allow me to do that. And my idea was to take my mic that's going into the modular, into two VCAs, and then use macro, so when I move the fader, I've got the 16N fader back next to me, I invert the voltage, so it pulls the bias of the VCAs down, so turns them from fully on to fully off, but at the same time, splits them out to increase the CV depths of LFOs coming in. And I thought, that's going to take me from this, like, using Oct, this washy, weird pan state, so I can move through your headphones completely freely, as opposed to being jammed hard left by the technology I was fighting on Wednesday. So do check out that macro module. The Gristleizer range has some demos from me as well. Nice trick with the convulsion generator I heard someone doing, speaking on Facebook, that they're using it to create these like percussive Kraftwerk accents in their beats where they kind of fire off this little log cluster wobble kind of thing. Yeah. Really cool patch.
I'm intrigued to know exactly what they're doing with that, because it almost sounded like that's not something you can do with the convulsion generator, but I'm not entirely sure. I'd like to see how they're doing.
I'll ask for details on that one. There's mixers, there's a Vactral VCAs, there's a spec dev filter, the pin matrix is out. There is Brunswick and Portland, which is something we're going to cover actually. That may be the next kind of video work that we do together. Maybe Brunswick and Portland.
Yeah, probably will be actually. Just a heads up on that. I know Thonk are currently out of stock of Brunswick. We're gonna try and get boards over. We presume they've run out of circuit boards, so we're gonna try and get those over to Steve and the Thonk crew as soon as we can. I think we've got some in stock at the workshop, so we'll probably send those over for the time being and reorder some ourselves. If anyone has emailed Future Sound Systems over the last couple of weeks to do with Brunswick or Portland and we haven't gotten back to you, I'm really sorry. I'm going to be doing that over the next few days. Both Jamie and I have just been in 100% soldering mode.
Well, you've released the recombination engine. It's totally fair enough.
Yeah, it's been a little bit crazy, but do hang on in there. Most of the things that are problematic are usually easy fixes. And likewise, if you go on our website for whatever reason, if you want to try and order something and PayPal isn't letting you, I ran into some really interesting problems with PayPal earlier, and I think they're all fixed now. But just seemingly PayPal breaking their own systems, which is always a good sign. So yeah, just hit that contact, smash that contact
Smash
button.
the like button.
And,
I'm failing at YouTube by not asking you to smash the like button. Someone said it
get
earlier,
in,
and it really did
get
make
in
me
touch with
laugh.
us.
There's the link in the live chat to Signal Sounds. Other stores will have this very soon. If they don't, a great thing you can do to help anyone making Eurorack modules is tell a store that you want something they don't stock. And then that then open the conversation of someone going, hey, Mr. Eurorack maker, we'd love to get some of your module in. And it just starts to feed the whole thing. It helps stores gauge what people want in their area, helps them know their communities. It helps you build a relationship. Absolutely tell a store. This or otherwise when there's something that you'd like. So recombination engines up at Signal Sounds. As I say, other stores will follow very, very soon. Do go check out the video demo that is linked in the description. For one very final time, if you want the vocal chain that I'm running tonight, I'm absolutely obsessed with running this absolute idiocy. That is what I'm using for my voice. I figured, hey, I cover modular, I should make a little vocal rig. I can send a link if anyone's really curious. You can support what I do on Patreon. That's super helpful for kind of keeping everything moving. There's going to be a lot more exclusives and things coming. Streams specific to them. There's a DivKid drive that has stems and samples and audio from things on there. Do go check out the isolation live streams. I will be updating that again tomorrow morning with a couple of streams following us. An intro to modular video synthesis at 7 p.m. EDT in the USA. I'll have to just check the time difference, but I may check that out live. If not, I'll certainly watch back because I'm curious about the LZX stuff. And then B-Boy Tech Report has his artist interview series at 6 p.m. Saturday, 7:30 p.m. UK, so tomorrow at 7:30 here. We have the Feeding the Monster episode 2 with Chris Meyer of Learning Modular, talking about filling this huge case, module choices. He's sharing his wisdom along the way, which is plentiful. And to specifically looking this time at VCOs, samplers, and wave shapers. All the stuff I've linked is either in the description or you can ask. Smash the buy button.
Smash that order button.
What are we looking at on Reload? I don't know what Reload is. Smooster, let me know what you mean. Signal Sounds tell you that the recombination engine is now a multiplex oscillator. That is now officially there in the product description.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Little graphic, just to get. I like that.
Oh, yeah.
I like looking at this. I like looking at the bottom wave and going, yeah, I want a bit of that. It makes me want to go and patch it.
See, I don't think you quite realise how much of a lifesaver that's going to be over the next 3 or 4 months, Ben. That has saved our bacon big time. I mean, I think Jamie may ask you for the Photoshop file or whatever.
Yeah, you
just
can
to
tidy
maybe
it up. There's a few
garish blue and purple hues on it because that's what our vibe is. Don't doubt your vibe, but yeah, we are eternally grateful for you doing that because that saves us a hell of a lot of panic trying to explain this thing to people.
Yeah. People saying there's lots of stuff to watch in the live chat. There is. I'm trying to keep the isolation streams list somewhat curated to friends and friends of friends and related things that because every man and his dog streaming, so it is tricky, but there's a lot of familiar faces out that I've seen in a lot of streams this past couple of weeks. So really, really amazing support from everyone. Yeah, all support each other. Enjoy yourselves. I don't think any other questions have come through. Let's just do one last scan. Hey, Matt Hodson's in the chat.
Oh, hey, Matt.
You need to tell us somewhere. It could be a Facebook update, Matt, but the story of moving from a church to a lighthouse. I've seen that alluded to a few times, and I want to know the story. Moved house twice very quickly into some interesting spaces, shall we say. He's now got lighthouse vibes with his modular setup. It's great.
Wow.
I don't think he's actually signalling ships in from the sea.
Oh, that's a shame. CV would be perfect for that. Surely you could set. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Really slow LFOs.
Yeah. Yeah. You'd need a boat would have a slew on it, wouldn't it? Because you can put the engine in reverse on a boat, but you naturally still have the forward momentum.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
boat synthesis, you just need to slew everything, right?
Low pass filter, everything.
Waves and slews. Yeah. Boat synthesis. The next big hit
There's
that all the
something
kids
there.
are into.
There's something there. I mean, we've already got skiffs and boats, so we're halfway there already.
Nailed it. Great. Thanks to everyone that tuned in. Just for a minute, because the live chat keeps going, I'm just going to pull up that full screen. It's nicer than our face. And I'm going to play Bad DJ DivKid.
Yes. Bring it. Smash that Volker.
I will see you all soon. I'll see you tomorrow, 7:30 hopefully for many people. And yeah, see you next time. See you everyone.
Cheers,
Bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Crush delay. Crush delay. Me and a Volker sample. What an absolute tool. It's been fun. Cheers everyone. See you next time.
See yous.